The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar broadcast from the Professionals of Color Network. The webinar is entitled today is Spaces of Exhale, Authenticity and Resiliency as Housing Professionals of Color. My name is Lori Sabata, and I'll be the technical producer for the webinar today. And I want to apologize in advance. I'm told by my co-presenters that my audio is not great, so but fortunately I don't have to say a lot today. I'm leaving that to our presenters. So I just wanted to spend a couple minutes just sort of taking care of a few housekeeping items. So as my first official duty, I wanted to make sure that everyone can see and hear. So I'd like to direct your attention to your control panel. So if you're hearing my voice and you're seeing, you should see the title screen for the webinar, please go ahead and just there's like a little sort of a cartoon hand on your control panel. If you could just click that, that lets me know that all is well on your end and that you can see and hear. Oh yeah, I see lots of raised hands, so it looks like everything is well on your end. Thank you so much for doing that. I wanted to go through just really quickly, because I know we have a lot of content to get through today, just kind of the flow of the presentation. So I'm going to finish up here in a minute or so. I'm going to turn it over to Yeti, who's the moderator today, and I'm going to let Yeti introduce the presenters for today. We're going to go through some slides and content from our presenters, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers from our panelists. So again, the way we're going to do that, so we have the audience in a listen-only mode today. So the way that we're going to do that is, again, I want to just bring your attention to your control panel. You should find a box there that says questions or chat. If you pull that up, you should be able to type in your questions there, and we'll be able to read those out and address those at the end. And you don't have to wait till the end of the presentation to type in your questions. As the things are rolling along, as you're thinking of questions, please go ahead and type those right in, and we'll be monitoring those throughout the presentation. I want to mention also that we will be recording this webinar, so if you have any colleagues that you know might have missed the webinar or would like to see the webinar, we'll be sending that out, the link out after the presentation today. So I want to let you know about that. So I am going to go ahead and turn it right over to Yeti. Welcome, Yeti.
Hi, Lori. Thank you so much for that introduction. I will be serving as your moderator today. My name is Yeti Marquez Santana. I am the Assistant Director for the Office of Residence Life and Housing Services here at NYU. And I also serve as the chair for the Cool-Wise Professionals of Color Network. And I really want to take the time to thank everyone for partaking in this webinar. Before we begin, I wanted to quickly go through the Professionals of Color Network's mission, which is our motivation and passion and drive to reach new heights in diversity, equity, and inclusive excellence. Our commitment to this work is to infuse diversity and inclusion into all aspects of Aku Hawaii by supporting, encouraging, and challenging our housing professionals and constituents that we serve. Through our efforts, we aim to transform our profession to a place where our colleagues are seen, heard, and matter in building an inclusive agenda to action. And I think I would be super remiss if I didn't mention our amazing Professionals of Color Network leadership team, Marcella Wong and Joyce Arias Brown. They currently serve as the chair-elect, and also Brian Matthew, who oversees our marketing and communications, Magda, who oversees our development efforts, Brandon and Jillian, who work together as our outreach and member engagement co-chairs, and DeMarcus and Honey, who serve as our program planning and development co-chairs as well. And I have the honor of being able to introduce the panelists today. And I will begin by sharing Thomas Range, who works as a residence education coordinator at Florida A&M University. So Thomas is the newly appointed residence education coordinator. Thomas has been working as a housing professional for 2 years as a residence director and now the residence education coordinator. Thomas is a 2-time graduate from FAMU, earning his bachelor's in political science in 2015 and his master's in education in 2017. Recently, Thomas has earned the Outstanding New Professional Award for his work within the department. Thomas resides in Tallahassee, Florida with his fiance and his son. And now introducing Lizeth Jaramillo. Lizeth currently serves as an associate director for residential life and housing at Barnard College. Lizeth holds a BA in psychology from William Patterson University and an MA in counseling from Centenary College University. While her professional career has been in residential life, Lizeth has a deep passion for mental health awareness, research around resilience in first-generation students and professionals, and authenticity in the workplace. As a first-generation Latina, Lizeth understands the challenge in being the first and navigating two worlds in one body and the value in paying it forward. Introducing Crystal Lay. She is the Director of Residence Life at CU Boulder. She has worked at several institutions of higher education, including the University of California, Berkeley, Miami University in Ohio, and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She is originally from Chicago, Illinois. She holds a master's in college student personnel from Eastern Illinois University and a master's in cultural foundations of education from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She is a proud mom who is not shy to share that her family is her top priority. In the workplace, Crystal strives to create family-responsive spaces where staff are not afraid to be the best parents possible. Her areas of interest includes exploring sense of belonging for first-year and transfer students, supportive environments for students and staff of color, residential curriculum, and professional staff training, supervision, and development. Professionally, she enjoys presenting at conferences where she works to create a space where professionals can learn and share their stories as they relate to issues of race and belonging and being a parent in housing. Thank you so much. That's the introductions of our panelists. And the purpose of today's panel is to learn about the panelists' real-life experiences as professionals of color in the field of housing, with a focus on authenticity and resiliency. The panelists will touch on additional topics such as intersectionality, navigating campus politics, and advocacy and allyship. As a participant, you will receive helpful advice and resources on how you can navigate the complex interplay of these realities within your work environment, and you will also receive tips on self-care, finding community, and creating spaces of exhale. So we'll begin with the first question of the day. What does authenticity look like for you in your professional practice?
So for me, authenticity, when I think of authenticity, my values and my ethics come into play, right? So I can't be the real me without having, the composition of what makes me, right? My values and my ethics. And so aligning myself with an institution and a department that shares or mirrors my values and ethics really make coming to work easy, showing up, being able to do my job effectively, because I know that my values are reflected in, the core values of my institution and in my department. And so for me, it's aligning myself with like-minded folks, aligning myself with like-minded departments, and just being able to go from there. When my values and ethics are being worked, I think that my best self comes out, and then when you're your best self, you can give out your best work. So without this authenticity, I think values and ethics really, really speak to me.
Thank you, Thomas.
I agree. I would say I would add my morals to that, and I think authenticity, especially in a professional practice, is a journey. You have to kind of learn yourself and learn what your non-negotiables are, because the institutions that we're working for are not perfect and are not going to align perfectly with our personal beliefs, morals, and values. But I think that for for my own journey, now being at my fourth institution, I can look back and say, even in times where I felt like I couldn't be my most authentic self, or I felt like I was being silenced or was silencing myself, I was able to learn through that in ways that now currently help me advocate for myself in ways that I wouldn't have done so before.
For me, I think about authenticity as being able to give myself the seal of approval at the end of the day or at the end of my work day. And so I always think about, when I show up, is it what you see is what you get? And that's what I want people to understand. I don't want to create any confusion or disconnection. And so it's really about owning my identities that I hold, naming those, owning my mistakes, acknowledging that I'm going to have bad days, encouraging folks to ask questions if there's a disconnect between how I showed up earlier in the morning, in the afternoon, or day to day. And so it's really being truly who I am and presenting myself in a way where, again, what you see is what you get.
Thank you so much. So Crystal, you mentioned how you show up, and that leads us right into our next question. So what are strategies for professionals of color to employ in regards to how they show up in the workplace without compromising their true authentic selves?
So I think what was the hardest for me was, I called it this merging of my personal and professional self. And I share that because when you look at stereotypes for Black people, for myself, single parent home, food stamps, like gang infested neighborhoods, all the things, check them off, And I had this piece of, how are people going to view me? Do I fit in here? Like imposter syndrome, that came up. Do I belong? And so the strategies that have really helped me with this merger was to remember where I come from, to not be ashamed, and to think about who I want to be and use my story to empower people, and just really acknowledge that we're all coming from different places. And so for me, it was addressing imposter syndrome. It was also thinking about emotional intelligence and how I brought stuff to work and how I addressed different things. And then also the realization that it's exhausting to be two different people. And so knowing that I got the job, I belong here, this place, I can make it work for me, is the strategies that I've really worked to employ to rectify, where I come from, and again, how that can inform or enhance who I want to be at work.
Thank you for that. Thomas or Lizette, do you have anything to share?
Definitely. I would have to acknowledge my privilege of being at an HBCU, because very rarely, if really ever, I have to compromise my true authentic self, because I work with people of color. My supervisors are people of color. The people that are on my team are people of color. So I'm surrounded by a microcosm of people of color. You can even say it's Wakanda, if you will, right? And so I really have to acknowledge that privilege. But with that, strategies to employ, definitely you want to be knowledgeable in the field. I really can't stress that enough. And we'll get into this a little later, but you definitely got to be knowledgeable in your field, and then be confident in your knowledge. When you have that knowledge and you're confident, you can let yourself show up, so to speak, right? It's like once you kind of mastered something, you can put your little spin on it. And so acknowledging that privilege, but still having the mindset to be knowledgeable and be confident. And then also incorporate, again, we talked about values and morals and ethics. Whatever you do, be excellent in it, right? So whatever that value is for you, incorporate that in your work, right? If timeliness is a big thing for you, be the first person to meet it, act with caring, operate in integrity. All of these are values and ethics that you can incorporate into your professional self and still be able to show up, because it's hard to really doubt work. It's really hard to doubt results, right? And so if you operate in your values, your work will show it. You're like, wow, this is good stuff coming from this person. And so yeah, that's where I kind of fall on that.
Thank you. Lisette?
I would agree. We talk about that at work all the time. If you do good work, people will see the work and really focus less on, hopefully focus less on what Crystal was talking about in the stereotypes. So I really value a high work ethic and transparency in the workplace. So being able to be a supervisor that says, I messed up, or you're right, or let's do this together, and being willing to get my hands dirty. I worry less about my loud nails or my lipstick or my earrings, because you can't deny that I do great work, and you can count on me when you give me an assignment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So looking more into resiliency, what were some challenges you faced in your current position as a professional of color, and how have you developed skills to bounce back and grow when difficult situations occur?
I've experienced this, I would say, in previous positions, really being challenged with not supportive white supervisors that just didn't consider language or tone or just their own privilege in the space, either gender, race, or just positionality in the institution. And in ways that you bounce back from that, I think having a community, having a village outside of work, or having people outside of your department or office that you can really rely on to say, I'm really struggling in this way, these are the things that I need. And just being able to vent and being able to, be vulnerable in those spaces, even if you can't be vulnerable everywhere. That in itself builds resilience, in my opinion. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable in the workplace with certain people, or finding mentorship, sponsorship, friends in the field that really see you. That to me has allowed me to bounce back and come back stronger.
Yeah, I will continue on and kind of go back to my resident director position. One of the things that I kind of struggled with was being comfortable with collaborating, like on my own, so not sanctioned collaborations from your supervisor or whatever, but collaborating with people of non-people of color, right? And so Florida A&M is in Tallahassee, Florida, right? We share Tallahassee with Florida State University, and so one of the things that we have kind of cultivated, and I gotta give it to Dr. Jennifer Wilder, my director, and Dr. Staten at Florida State University, and cultivating the relationships that they already had, and then allowing our departments to partner and collaborate during our trainings in this thing called the Tally Rally, right? And it's something that really, I would have to say, I haven't seen a whole lot where an HBCU or any type of institution and another institution really could just come together and do a meeting of the minds with their resident assistants. And so it was the first one this past year, and just having that challenge that I had, and then having this collaboration really forced me to grow and to be outgoing, and to have that resilience in that, hey, I might feel uncomfortable, but this is what needs to be done. This is great information that could be shared from both institutions. And so that's one challenge. And the other challenge I would say in this new position is kind of being in a great responsibility in that there are not a lot of REC positions, resident education coordinator positions that I have found at HBCUs. So when that conversation of best practices comes around, in terms for what works on the HBCU campus, we're really, I'm really kind of charting my own best practices, kind of finding out what works, what doesn't work. And so with that, it's kind of hard, but it's definitely a great responsibility that we have undertaken as an institution to sort of really kind of chart out that territory, what best practices look like at resident education for HBCUs.
In my current role as a director, I know that people are looking up to me. They're watching me differently, sometimes more closely. There's a lot of politics, there's a lot of change. And, I think the challenges are trying to decipher if people go around me or over me, is that, credibility, is that race? Like, there's different questions that I have with interactions that take place. Also, in some of our leadership meetings, I may be the only Black person or only person of color in that space. And so I always am cognizant of how much do I need to hold or carry to make sure that voices are present, or that we're considering how this might impact folks who are marginalized or minoritized. And so that challenge of making sure that I am always feeling comfortable and ready to present, whether, to present for my team or represent my team or other folks of marginalized identity is really important. And so for me, I think about, I don't have a choice. I need to address things, calling my colleagues to action, calling people out, and really being the voice for groups of folks, particularly being at a PWI. And the other thing I've done that's really helpful, I have a counselor. I am in counseling, and I talk about workplace stuff at work, because when you move up, it gets a little lonely. And so having an outlet to process some of my work things and having a supportive supervisor have been some really helpful things with regard to navigating challenges I've been facing.
Thank you so much. What do you believe are the most pressing issues facing professionals of color in residence life and housing, and what are ways that you believe we can overcome that?
I would say most pressing can be not finding a community. It really depends on the location of your job, how many people look like you at your institution. So not finding community. I think often we recruit folks and don't work on our retention plans. I think there's tone policing. There's a unhealthy amount of emotional labor that goes into taking care of ourselves, our staffs, and our students. And then I would also say having experiences dismissed by our white colleagues at times, to say, hey, this is what happened to me, and there not being an understanding that I just need you to listen or just go there with me or consider that this could be true. I think ways to overcome it are to make sure you have a good network. I think institutions need to be different and better about retention plans and more open about the experience that folks can have when they come to the departments.
I think a good way for us to kind of build a community would be definitely in our professional organizations. And I would say one of the pressing issues would be representation in our professional organizations and associations, particularly at the senior level. I have to kind of shout out some folks who really have kind of breaking barriers and being the change that we as a group kind of want to see, I'm really excited that these folks are doing that, but at the same time, it's really just a step in the right direction. My major, my supervisor, Terrence J. Turner, who was just was selected to be in the Leadership Academy for Kuho I. And that's, a competitive process. We know our CHO leadership, the great Nishandra Myrick, who is past president, and then just the president-elect, Nair, who's coming in, and then even our state reps. So these are folks who are being the change that we want to see, but at the same time, those are 4 names that I've just listed off, and there's a lot of positions, definitely in CHO. So, you know, I think that we definitely need to get more involved in our professional associations, and I think that we can have our community there, continue to cultivate that. But yeah, I think that's how we overcome that.
Yeah, I would say something that I've seen done at several institutions, and I'm a part of at my current institution, is a community space for administrators of color. So at Barnard, I was able to join the and be one of the leadership chairs for the administrators of color for Barnard and Columbia University, and it tackles that sense of lack of community and lack of support and just like feeling so siloed sometimes in a large space. And we're able to just connect, even if it's 2 or 3 times a semester, and build community from those small gatherings. That has been really successful that I've seen. I would say pressing issues or additional pressing issues would include the imposter syndrome. Especially if you don't have community, especially if you don't have examples of people in leadership that look like you or have, you know, a story similar to yours. And we can tackle that. And we, as, you know, already in the field, can look at our interns, can look at our entry-level staff who identify as staff of color, and really invest in them and really support them, so we can hopefully tackle those feelings of you're not deserving or you're inadequate, to not have them feel the imposter syndrome as much.
With the focus on intersectionality, what does support look like for professionals of color with intersecting marginalized identities? And what resources do you recommend?
Well, for me, I'm a Black heterosexual male, but I'm also a father, right? I don't think in where I am at Florida A&M University that any of those per se are really marginalized, except maybe being a father in student affairs, specifically in housing and residence life. We all know housing and residence life, you know, different hours, long nights, early mornings. And so my support has really come from my department, my supervisor, who also who matches my identity, who also is a father, has really been I can't even think of, just a great supervisor, and being able to help me as a new father understand the balance, that work-life balance. So yeah, I wouldn't really say I'm too marginalized, but I just know that I want to be the best for my son, and be the best father, and then care for my son. So resources, I would say, kind of build up that village of people who share that identity, right? One of the things I made a point to do in conferences, anything that deals with parenting in the profession, I go to. And people of color, you know, non-people of color, whoever, I just need to get that information on how do you do it? And so just doing that really kind of helps me, and that support, like, this worked for somebody else, maybe this can work. And then building that same community at your home campus, right? Meeting up with people who share that identity. Hey, you're a father, I'm a father, you know, go out, whatever that looks like, but build that support, because you will need each other over the course of the year, for sure.
Thank you.
I think our national organizations have a lot, and regional organizations have affinity spaces that are very, very helpful for folks who have intersections in their identities and are seeking support or community or fellowship with them. So I would recommend reaching out to the regional spaces that are affiliated with associations and start there. Or if you happen to be at a conference, I know that they have meetups at conferences that, from my experience, I think they put a call out for many affinity spaces to join that way.
The two that come up for me are being Black and being a woman. I hesitated on the mom piece because I think I'm pretty fortunate. We have a moms group here at Boulder, which is great, and we get together monthly to do coffee. And so what I found when I list out all of my identities is no matter where you work, you have to sacrifice something, which is not always the best feeling. You know, you're not going to find a group that hits off or marks off all 8 identities that you may hold. And so I try to gravitate towards who do I put in my corner that can fill some of my bucket. And so I have a call with some other directors, which are great, and we get together quarterly just to talk about what is it like to be a mom, a wife, Christian, and be directors. And we're all new directors. And so I would say I always say Verizon Network, find your network of people so you can vent and process with them. I would also say when you job search, and this is crucial, asking the right questions during your interview, trying to figure out what are the resources available on that campus, the affinity groups that are available, what's happening in the area. I know we have a chapter of NAACP here in Boulder. Like, what are the things that you need before you take that job? So that way, if you're able, you can know what you're getting into as best as possible.
As housing professionals, we serve the needs of a diverse student body. How has the political and campus climate influenced and impacted your professional practice?
So, like I said, I'm located in Tallahassee, Florida, is the capital of the state of Florida, and so we are just a stone's throw away from the capital. And so the good thing about that is our students are really politically engaged, and so that's something that I'm very proud to say about our students. But at the same time, we are very, very aware of the political implications of the student I'm blanking. The impact of funding on the department when it comes to the Lord help me, the performance-based funding. And so with that, it really kind of it matters to our students. When they come into our offices and, hey, I'm having this issue, I'm having that issue, I don't know what to major in. And then being in housing and in residence life, they really just they come to you first, about financial aid and everything. And so being where they live, that's kind of what we sign up for. And so it really helps us because we're able to kind of sit them down and say, hey, this stuff matters. You deciding if you want to major in STEM, graduating and finishing at 4, all of this stuff matters to not only to you but to our institution. And so that's really where it comes down to us for the political implications. Just making sure that we're on track for our performance-based funding and doing everything that we need to do to make sure that our students are graduating on time and being productive members of society.
At my most recent institution, we had students who were dealing with homelessness, with food insecurity. There were protests, and it's really easy to assume that I know what they're going through because I went to college too, but I don't. College is completely different when I graduated in 2002. And so I always tell myself to not assume that I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I should listen more than I'm speaking and really get a feel for what their experience is like, and what they're dealing with, because things are drastically different in my opinion. And so it's really making space for where they are in their learning. It's hard and exhausting, and there's so much more I wish we could do. And so it's making sure that I'm aware of what are the resources and tools that are available on our campus. How can we support our students, and we have to realize, someone said this at a conference I went to, they said students don't stop being hungry at 5 o'clock when your office closes, right? And so how do we make sure that we're looking at all the things that are impacting our students emotionally, spiritually, physically, all these things, and work to provide strategies to support them as best as we can. So that's how I've really altered, is again, listening more than I talk and trying to understand what resources are available and sharing those with students and staff.
Thank you.
With the current political climate and the decisions being made, week to week, and it really does impact our student body. I feel very lucky to be in New York City, and it's mainly liberal, but we do have, students that are conservative and students that want to be supported in their conservative beliefs. And I fully struggle with that, and I am comfortable saying that, because how do we support all students, which is my job, but then we go back to how that ties into your morals and your beliefs. But I think being open to the conversation is what it comes down to, being able to stand in your truth and accept somebody else's truth without it becoming an argument, and finding resources that can support those students, whether it be through the counseling center or other political groups on campus.
So we're going to shift gears to allyship. What has helped you become a more effective advocate for professionals of color and or students of color? And throughout the webinar, there's been things noted such as affinity spaces, having mentors, and also the important thing to remember is that when our offices close at 5, the students' needs are still very much prevalent. So with those things in mind, what advice would you have for others who want to advocate and or serve as allies?
I would say think outside the box. So, if you know that a program is happening and you know that they're going to have extra food, considering a student that is out of meals, that is out of meal flights, or if an opportunity is presented to you to present or to be on a webinar and you're unavailable, reaching out to other colleagues of color to say, hey, do you want this opportunity for exposure within the field? Even if you're only a part of the conversations, I think that there is power in speaking up and in those spaces offering other resources via people, and making the way for your colleagues who may not have that opportunity at that time.
I would say really providing an exceptional student experience. That's one of our strategic priorities from the president's office, and it really just kind of rings true, right, for professionals and for students. You should be expecting an exceptional student experience when you come to FAMU, and therefore our professionals, we know exactly what we need to do and what we need to provide. And so even if and when I decided to leave Florida A&M University, that's something I'm going to carry with me, because if I'm still, doing what I need to be doing in terms of providing that exceptional experience, then everything else is going to take care of itself. My tone, my customer service, all these things are going to be good. And so for people that want to serve as allies and advocate, just know that students want an exceptional experience when they come to college.
I would say things that have helped me. I had to learn about my own self, my own triggers, what pushed my buttons, all the things. And so that self-learning thing was key. Also learning how to listen. I've gone to SJTI, NHTI, like I'm an institute person. And so all that learning stuff has been really helpful for me. And I'm quite SAG associated with that. But I just wanted to share that those have been key. I think also with the position I have, it's really, I have to use my position of power and know that I'm going to be in spaces that my staff or students may not be in, and I have a responsibility to advocate for my team. And so quite literally, to answer the question, I would say that my director position, advice I would say, be strategic, have a plan. You have to have a plan. And you also still have to eat. And so I always think about how many cards do I have to play in this interaction or with regard to this thing that's taking place on campus. And so there's also the self-protection piece that comes up. And so really being careful, and that's the strategy piece. I would also say articles, presenting, creating space for folks to tell their own story is something that's also important.
Thank you so much. So what are some strategies you have implemented in your personal practice to cultivate self-care when engaging in social justice work?
For me, being in community is really important. So going back to the spaces that you can create on campus, whether they're official spaces open to all people of color on your campus or your village of people, to just, sometimes you just need to call somebody and say, this happened and I need to process it. Or, I was presenting on a social justice topic and this conversation came up. And having a space that is safe for you to just vent about and just talk about what the challenges are. For me, I'm also very introverted, so just making sure that I have time every day to myself, that, that time is not, that doesn't belong to anybody else. So that it cannot be interrupted. It is for me to do whatever I want to do by myself. That is very important for me to recharge, especially when you're engaging in social justice work that can be so taxing.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree. Being able to compartmentalize and understand that you by yourself can't save the world. Because social justice is hard work. It makes people uncomfortable, and so it's taxing emotionally. So just being able to make sure that you recenter yourself, and being able to continue to move forward, I think is a strong strategy for sure.
Something I had to tell myself was everybody in student affairs is not here to do diversity work. That is a hard pill to swallow. And I say that because at 5 o'clock, there are people who leave and don't talk about this. At 5 o'clock, I'm still Black. So it's really understanding that self-care piece is not going to happen in the overall piece of student affairs. Going into this assuming that everyone was going to be, holding hands and skipping down the sidewalk, you got to get rid of that. And so really rechecking your expectations of your colleagues, the folks around you, and what you can get from these spaces is crucial from my experience. I think also acknowledging that we all fight in our own ways. And so I can't judge or gauge how you're going to be an SJ warrior or advocate. And so, again, it's resetting my expectations for my colleagues in this field. Shout out to introversion. I try to have lunch alone as much as possible so I can breathe a little bit. Family time is important. I do leave at 5 because I go home and make dinner for my kids, and that's how I regroup and I can be my best self for work and home. And I think the other thing too, strategy. If you have a strategy, you have a plan. For me, that has helped me have my own wellness because I really like to sleep at night. So coming up with a plan for how I want to tackle or approach something suggestion work has been helpful.
Thank you so much. So that leads us to our last question before we move on to Q&A. And that's, if you can go back in time and give advice to your younger professional self, what would you say?
I would say don't take everything so personally. I have been so heartbroken when, like, you know, women of color in senior level positions are not, you know, this like dream lifesaver that I've imagined them to be. And you're not going to be compatible with every woman of color in a senior leadership position. But I had this like idealization of what mentorship looked like. And I think that's because I didn't have a lot of examples of mentorship growing up or in my own undergrad experience. So I took those very personally, and it stayed with me for a long time. I would say not to take everything so personally, and really believe that you have the job that you were hired for because you deserve it and you earned it, and you performed the best out of all of the candidates that they interviewed. And you have to believe that, and you have to bring your best self to work every day. Because if you don't believe that you deserve it, then that is going to wear you out, and you're going to burn out quicker than you would without a positive mentality.
I have 3 things. First, I think our system is set up for us to compete with other people of color. And so I could go back to my younger self. I would say we all got this job, and how about we collaborate versus tear each other down. Secondly, politically, my emergency is not always my boss's emergency. And so really trying to understand and taper down. I think that's some of the emotional intelligence pieces. And then the third piece, when I was entry level, it was more so realizing that I'm probably only holding 10% of this puzzle. And so understanding that I should probably ask questions, and leadership can be more transparent. But I really thought I knew all the things, and I didn't. And so I would just say, Crystal, calm down. There's probably a bigger piece here.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I'm still fairly new in the game, right? I'm not skin yet, so to speak. But for me personally, I feel like I could have done more as an RA. And whatever that looks like, I just feel like I didn't waste that opportunity, because I was still a pretty good RA. Because I was an RA here at FAM, I'm still working here, so something happened well, right? But I think that competencies, just trying to be ahead of the game, would have really served me to where I am now. And I know that's not something really RAs really think about. But going back in time, I just like, hey, you should pay attention to this literature. This might serve you later. And being able to just kind of grow earlier on. So not being timid and being afraid. I don't know how to do that, so I'm gonna stay away from it. It's something that I've kind of cultivated now, just really kind of jumping into things, and then going from there and then growing with it and being okay with growing.
Thank you so much. So now I'll let Lori take over the Q&A portion. So feel free to type in your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible.
All right, sounds great. And I do have a couple of questions already. The first one that came in has to do with, goes back to the aspect of being authentic, and just the challenges of being authentic, not only in person, but sometimes online and other places, and just feelings of being blacklisted sometimes. So the question is, like, how would you navigate? Often there's white voices in politics that are ingrained in the field when you're trying to be authentic. How do you work around it? You are going to be blacklisted sort of environment.
I think it goes back to strategy. And whatever I post online, I know that I need to answer for it. And I know that's not everyone's philosophy. but I don't write anything down that I can't explain. You know, my boss might call me in the office to ask me about something online. That's the climate that we're in. And so I'm always cognizant of, when I write this down, is this how I want people to remember me? Or will I be able to defend what I said, you know, to the people who sign my paycheck? And so I think that authenticity piece is really about, if I write it down, can I sit by it? I don't believe in blacklisting people. I really don't. I think it's a tool we use to scare people, and we've used that for years prior to social media included. And so I think it's really important to see the entire candidate. If you're writing problematic, like I'm oppressing people stuff, that's one thing, but I think everyone deserves the opportunity to at least be asked the question, or, you know, provide some context of what they meant in an online posting.
Yeah, I think one strategy that people use is having kind of like a personal and then professional social media persona. Personally, I have tried that. I don't like it. So I only have a personal social media presence. I do not invite people that I work with or people in the field. It's not somewhere that I talk about work stuff or higher ed stuff, student affairs, etc. And maybe that goes back to self-care. You know, like I want to talk on my social media about Racket TV, about Netflix, about music, etc. And to the blacklisting piece, I guess my follow-up question is like, who is blacklisting you? Because there, you know, I want to believe that there are people that don't believe in the blacklisting. I want to see you as a holistic candidate and a holistic person. And yes, we have to be mindful of what we're posting on the internet because it does represent us, especially if you have a professional page. But there are people that are willing to have the conversation with you to see, you know, why did you post that, or where is it coming from? And hopefully it could be like a learning opportunity for both.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question. This one is, what advice would you give to individuals who have clearly articulated that they would like to be supervised, but still are failed by white supervisors despite repeating what they need and why? So that is the creation of a professional development plan and revisiting it.
Not every institution or supervisor is going to meet your needs, and we have to make the decision as best we can. And I know it can be very challenging because so much relies on what we do for work, or maybe you're location bound, or have other barriers. But I would say really connect. This is the time to really find mentorship, find sponsorship, reach out to people in neighboring institutions or institutions that you would want to work for to see what support looks like elsewhere. And if someone is repeatedly not showing up in the way that you need in a professional space, depending on what's going on, I would say document everything and have your own list of, you know, these are the times and examples that I haven't been supported. But maybe it's also time to move on from that institution.
I would add
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kristen. No, go ahead, Kristen.
Your supervisor won't be your person for everything. I can't be everything for each person that I supervise, and that's the reality of it. And so, you know, like what was shared, finding a mentor, finding a sponsor, finding other people that you can connect with will be really helpful. Now, if your supervisory relationship is impacting your ability to do good work, that's when it's problematic. And so I think Ombudsman's office, if you have that, OIEC or EEO, HR, they do or should have coaching plans and the ability to sit down, or it could be your supervisor, right, to do a mediation and say, these are things that I need to feel competent and safe in my workplace, and come up with a plan. And you all talk about how are you going to check in to make sure your relationship is progressing. I think every supervisor has a responsibility to try to understand what it means for you to be a person of color on that campus. That's the base thing that I expect from every person is to be able to engage in that conversation. I think that's pretty fair.
Definitely, I agree. And I just wanted to add briefly, there are departments that advertise when they're advertising jobs that one of their main things is professional development, where we seek to grow you, learn from our feet. And so if with setting with Crystal's advice, and if you're ready to move, whatever that looks like for you, I would be very intentional in finding a place that is willing and is committed to growing you.
All right, very good, thank you. And I think that's all that we have for questions, actually, and we are coming up on the hour. So I wanted to turn it back over to you, Yeti, because I think you had a few more things you wanted to go over.
Yes, what I want to thank everyone for taking this past hour to hear our panelists and their experiences as they talk about authenticity and resiliency. And I want to say a huge thank you to our 3 panelists today. I know there may have been some pauses in between switching over to the next slide, and it's because I was taking lots of notes for reflection after this panel. So thank you so much for sharing your lived experiences. Really quickly, I wanted to focus your attention to the screen. And if you identify as a person of color that works in housing and residential life, we encourage you to join our Facebook group. And there's a bit.ly there. It's a space for networking, positive support, and professional development. So what's next for Akuoi POCN? We're very excited to launch our 3rd annual blog series. This topic is focused on best practices for hiring and retaining professionals of color. This will be launched this upcoming Friday, and submissions will be accepted up until Monday, July 1st. So you can speak from a candidate perspective or from an employer's perspective, or both. So definitely looking forward to those blog submissions. Ongoing is our Akuoi Faces of POCN, and that's also posted throughout our social media, and these submissions will continue throughout the summer. So we encourage you to participate and submit your information so that you can also be featured as well. And very exciting, cannot believe it's already June, but we are very much looking forward to our annual conference and exposition, ACE, which is taking place from Saturday, June 22nd to Tuesday, June 25th in Toronto. And if you are able to participate in ACE and attend, we highly encourage you to also register for the Multicultural Institute. We have a very exciting lineup, and this is taking place on Tuesday, June 25th. It's a half day from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and it's a $20 registration. And also, we would love to be able to network and meet in person, so we highly encourage you to also attend our reception, which takes place on Sunday, June 23rd. Again, thank you so much. We hope that you had some great takeaways from participating in today's webinar, and wish you the best of luck with your summer and the rest of the week.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.